What's up, mi gente? Welcome back to Banking on Cultura. I am your host, Victoria Jen Rodriguez. And here on the show, we talk about the vibrancy and complexity of Latino culture, entrepreneurship, and of course, all the bochinche in between. Now, today's guest, I want to make sure you guys go grab your notebook, go grab your pens, because we're going to get a lot of hacks today in terms of visibility and how you should be thinking about yourself when you want to market your services, your goods, your story to essentially attract more clientele, right? And to get a buzz around your business model, around what it is that you are bringing to the marketplace. So this is going to be a good one. So let me do a quick intro and then I'll pass over the mic to him. So Didier Morais is the CEO of Vital Versatility, a public relations firm with an expertise in reputation management. He has worked with prominent personalities and brands including Meek Mill, Megan Thee Stallion, Michael Rubin, Van Jones, Fat Joe, Yo Gotti, Roc Nation. I feel like I can go on and on and on. Puma, Reform Alliance, Douce Cognac. Shout out, by the way, to Nancy and Dren Starr over at Douce and many, many others. And he is truly making a mark for himself as one of the very few Afro-Latinos who are killing it in the public relations space. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
So,
you almost had the last name pronunciation right.
Right, I know. When I said it, I was like, oh,
but it's all good.
Morais. Didier Morais.
There we go.
Carajo. We got it now.
Indeed,
do you like correcting people to pronounce your name correctly?
When I was younger, I didn't. And then I kind of over the years was told, like, if you don't correct people, it's like you're not educating them. And at the end of the day, we only have one name. And our name is our representation of our family. And that kind of resonated with me. So now I've kind of done a better job of kind of bringing it to the forefront. Not only my first name, but my last name, because I always think in the back of my mind, it's a representation of my family.
Yes. So. I love that because I found like a lot of Latinos who have maybe difficult names, they tend to just let people like rock out and call them by an inappropriate name. And I totally agree with you. We should be course correcting and being like, actually, this is the correct way to pronounce it. So thank you. You're seeing it live in action, y'all. It's as easy as that.
It's all about transparency and family vibes. If we don't communicate, and I'm in the business of communication, then how are we going to build as a society?
Absolutely. I love it. So we like to start the show with some bonchinches. So give us something we can't Google about you, which I'm pretty sure there's nothing out there he does not want us to know about him because he's in the business of communication and brand building. So give us something.
Let me see. I think... obviously, I'm Colombian and Cape Verde. I know you can kind of Google that. My father actually moved recently to Portugal, so he was living in Colombia for a little bit. And I'm an only child, so thankfully I got my little cousins nearby holding me down. And shout out to Alejandro and Julie. And Julian just graduated from Princeton, so I always considered myself the smartest of the family, but he has usurped me in that sense. But Alejandro is also incredibly intelligent and has a bright future. So shout out to the family out here killing it.
I love that. What's interesting is a lot of people are moving to Portugal. Like a lot of people. What's happening over there?
I feel like it's become a lot more of a tourist destination. it was always beautiful, right? But I think people are starting to really appreciate Lisbon for the beauty that it is. It's still, expensive, but it's not as expensive as some of the other major European cities, but it has an incredible lot of history as well. So I really think people are starting to, go appreciate it for sure. And obviously for other reasons, but especially from a soccer perspective, I think Cristiano Ronaldo also did just for him being one of the best soccer players of all time, has raised the profile of Portugal in that sense, where I think other people are curious from a sports perspective. So I just think there's a bunch of different factors that have just made Portugal popping, but it's phenomenal, and I recommend everybody visit.
It's on my bucket list. I have not been there. I actually want to go there during the holidays because the pictures that I see over there of how gorgeous with all the lights and the whole vibe.
Oh, it's beautiful. I was there for I've been there like 4 times, but for the holidays, by far, super beautiful. Yeah,
I've heard. Okay, so you actually made the transition. You were in sports, right? Sports journalism. And then you transitioned to start your own firm. So What was that process like? Did something happen that made you be like, you know what, I'm not working for anybody else, I'm ready to do me? Like, what was the thought process?
Well, I think there were a few phases, right? So I was a sports journalist first, right? And then when I transitioned out of journalism, and I saw where the journalism industry was headed at the time, because again, growing up, like my dream was to do sports journalism. Like I wanted to be the Colombian, Cape Verdean Stephen A. Smith. And I had achieved that goal. I had high profile internships. I was covering LeBron James and Dwayne Wade in the Miami Heat as an intern at the Miami Herald. And then I ended up being, I was 23. I was covering the Boston Red Sox for New England Sports Network. It's like the equivalent of Yes Network. And, even doing some on-air work. And it was a beautiful experience. But at the same time, I think there were a combination of factors, mainly the fact that I had been in the newspaper side of things. And then I saw how newspaper was cutting down the words for journalism, and just it wasn't allowing me to expand and write the way I wanted to. But then when you went online and you have all the space to write, they didn't really care about the quality of reporting. And that was towards a shift of aggregation where they were like, oh, just rewrite this other person's thing, when I wanted to break news or I wanted my feature stories to stand out. So unfortunately, I started falling out of love with journalism and with sports journalism. It prompted me to pivot into PR. And, it was really, there was a whole other backstory of me being unemployed and trying to find my footing when I made that shift. That was a real pivotal moment in my life. But I did tech PR for like 3.5 years, and I just did it just because I needed to get my foot in the door. I went to another firm where then I started getting a lot of expertise in entertainment and lifestyle, which is a lot of where my passion was. And I helped pretty much build the music and entertainment side of that division, essentially in many ways from scratch. Like they had a foundation and I kind of built it with my relationships. And just over time, I realized, I started bringing in a lot of clients. I started doing working my division worked in many ways as a silo. And again, it was a testament to also what I was provided by my boss over there, and kind of giving me the freedom to do, to move, on my own. And that kind of gave me the confidence to ultimately, move on my own. So, and working with organizations like, with Roc Nation and just with different artists, the Fat Joes and the Yo Gottis, and seeing how they were all about ownership and building their own enterprises. And then just, no pun intended, but I was following the blueprint that, these individuals and these artists and organizations were laying out, where I wanted to own, started with owning my own property. And I bought my first property. Then I'm like, what else can I own? And I'm like, well, the only other thing is creating my own organization and building and owning that. And that was kind of what ultimately set me into this second chapter of, my PR career.
Amazing. And how long have you had your own firm now?
2.5 years.
That's it?
Yeah.
I thought you've been doing this. Well, you have been doing this for years, but I thought you had your firm. So 2 years in.
Yeah.
Give us some major learnings that you've had. What's up, mi gente? Are you looking for mentorship and the place to secure the big bag? Have you ever watched me here on the Banking on Cultura podcast and thought to yourself, you know what? I want to work with Victoria Jen. Or maybe you thought to yourself, I want to be a part of her network of badass women and entrepreneurs. Well, guess what? You absolutely can. Join me this November 15th through the 16th in the heart of New York City for my 7th annual Secure the Big Bag and Wellness Summit. Let's face it, so many of us are tired, burnt out, ready to throw in the towel, honey, and quite frankly, we want to dedicate ourselves to the soft life. But what if there was a way for us to achieve both time and financial freedom and also have a healthy, well-balanced life? What if you could secure the big bag, build a business that fuels you versus drains you, as well as build a solid network of business besties who want to support and motivate you while also centering self? This summit is the premier destination for the latest marketing, sales, and AI tools that can 10x your business while also nurturing your well-being. Learn from top experts from both business and wellness, including executives from the corporate sector, so that you can explore corporate-level opportunities that can elevate your business to new heights. Ensuring you're not just prepared, but fully equipped to dominate in 2025 and beyond. This is your opportunity for your business to thrive while you do too. Head over to securethebigbag.com to check out the agenda and all the heavy hitters that will be in the building. I cannot wait to see you in New York City, mi gente. It's go time.
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think part of it is making sure you have a strong accounting team. I think that's one of the things that I underestimated at first, because I think you don't really realize how much you're paying quarterly in taxes. Like, yeah, of course, the money is coming in.
That 40% adds up real quick.
Right. And so thankfully, I've always been good with my money. My father really taught me strong money management skills at a young age. That has helped me like light years, where once I'm throwing in these big quarterly payments, I'm like, well, at least I'm good where I can also pay my team and my employees, pay myself. And so I think that's certainly, one big part of it. And obviously make sure you have a strong attorney, making sure you have the legal protection, because in terms of bringing in the clients, and like, I knew I could do that. I knew I had the relationships, building a team, obviously similarly to how I did in other organizations, like you've had that experience, but it's kind of it's the other pieces. When you're an entrepreneur, you are legal, you are finance, you are IT, you are HR in the beginning, you are absolutely everything. So, thankfully, I had some experience in drafting some contracts, and I had some friends in the legal sector that helped me out, and I had some experience on the finance side of the business that I already kind of came into it knowing kind of the basic framework. But having good accountants and good attorneys also helped me from an operations perspective.
These are really good call outs, because I find that a lot of entrepreneurs try to skip this part. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the part that's not exciting. And so they try to do everything and anything else. And then Uncle Sam comes at the end of the year and it's like, and then they're like, fuck, right? They're all upset that they didn't pay attention to, like, essentially the business fundamentals, like the foundation of your business. If it's not strong, just like a house, any wind that comes through
knocks it down.
Exactly.
Yeah. And part of what I was doing as I was not only prepping, but in the early first couple of days and weeks, was picking the brains of other entrepreneurs, right? And just asking, what are some things I should do? What have I not thought of yet? Even making sure, like, all right, separating your personal and business expenses. Like, I learned from other people's mistakes. Oh, I didn't separate them in the beginning. I had them conflated. And then when it came down to tax season, it hurt me in the long run. So at least I asked people and learned from other people's mistakes off the rip to be able to kind of set the course for a little bit of an easier trajectory. Obviously, you're still having a lot of challenges along the way, but picking a lot of people's brains earlier so that they can give you the advice and you can learn from their mistakes.
Interesting that you say that, because I have an online learning platform called the Dare to Leap Academy that I specifically created because I was in corporate for 15 years, and 7 years ago is when I decided to step out. And I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I didn't even have a circle of entrepreneurs that I could go to. My whole circle was corporate. Like, that was my network. So I literally had to figure it out, trial and error. And thankfully, within my first year of business, I actually made some really good money. But because I didn't understand the tax game or understand how to prepare, I had to end up paying Uncle Sam like $40,000. And it like still hurts me to this day, because there's so much I could have done with that money, but I didn't know what I could write off. I didn't know the game. And so the Dare to Leap Academy was created so that they could learn from my mistakes. So that women who want to start and scale up their business, I made all the mistakes. I understand the formula. Like, learn it first before you take the leap, because they'll come and it'll bite you in the ass later,
Yeah.
So learn from other people's mistakes. I love that. Super, super important. So there aren't many Afro-Latino owned PR firms, are there?
Not to my knowledge, So again, I'm trying to blaze a trail for our people. That's the other thing, is really just be able to create opportunities. In many places where I've worked, there haven't been people that look like myself or have the mentality and perspective and approach, and not just myself, but just people of color in general. And I think one of the things I wanted to also create was just an organization that embodies, the culture, la cultura.
Sí.
And I just wanted to make sure that was really, that really conveyed through what we're doing with Vital Versatility.
I love that. So, were you born in Colombia or were you born here?
No, I was born over here, but I've been to Colombia like at least 20 times in my life. I have a lot of family over there, but I'm a lot closer to my Colombian side than I am to my Cape Verdean side. I think in this point in life, I'm actually trying to learn and get closer to my Cape Verdean side, because I was always just so attached to my Colombian side. Like, my grandparents lived very close, so like, you love me some bandeja paisa. I mean, like, I would
bread.
love.
Oh my God. It's really easy for you to gain a lot of weight.
Of course. And I did at one point, so I had to relax for a little bit.
You got to monitor it, man.
Yeah.
So you have a magic to you around storytelling. It's one of, I believe, your key differentiators from others in the space. So where does your creativity for storytelling come from?
I think it comes from my experience as a former journalist. I think one of the things that has really brought me this far in PR has been my perspective as a journalist, because I used to pitch my editor stories that I would want to write, that I would want to do on air, and I would be able to just come up with concepts and just bring them to life in my writing. And now in this space of publicity, that's part of the job. Is like, yeah, certainly you're going to help your clients with announcements and everything, but sometimes you have to be able to bring ideas out of nothing and bring it to the client and create these opportunities from scratch. And it's something that I think I see a lot of similarities, and that's why you see a lot, not all, but some journalists that are able to make that crossover into PR, because at the end of the day, I see it as storytelling. I'm just storytelling from a different lens, right? And now instead of the stories that I would want to write, I'm just pitching the concepts for other people to write to make my clients look good, but to highlight and do that type of storytelling. So, and I think a lot of journalists that I work with can appreciate my perspective because I was in their shoes and I know the nuances. I know the importance of integrating, additional sources to make sure that your piece is as well-rounded and well-reported as possible. I know when you're working on different deadlines and how you have to adjust accordingly. And I'm very respectful of that because I remember being held to tight deadlines myself. And I also just knowing how to differentiate between what's a good story and what's a great story, or what's a nothing story. Like, what is just nothing that is not going to get press coverage, and being able to convey that to your client, and also telling them, listen, I used to be a reporter. So if I'm looking at this objectively from a journalistic lens, I don't see a story here. And being able to have those tough conversations with your clients as well.
Yeah, that's got to be a hard pill to swallow, especially if they think like they're fabulous. And in your industry, I know everybody does think that they're fabulous. So given the state of media in general, and kind of clickbait, and understanding what is now driving people to actually click and want to read a story, how are you managing that with making sure you're maintaining like the integrity of what the story is supposed to be about?
Well, I think the integrity of the story doesn't change necessarily. I think part of it is doing the due diligence on the publication and the reporter and what is their approach and how they're shifting. But I think we're in the midst of a real transformation in media. And you're seeing it with some of the layoffs, and really with the proliferation of people getting information from social, right? From a different generation, they'd get all the their news from newspapers. Others would now get it from, Twitter, but and it would be publications, being posted, like their articles being posted on Twitter. But now you're kind of just seeing it from Instagram or TikTok. And now you have to almost tailor your approach to you still want to tell, the objective, well-balanced stories and doing it in the traditional way. But you also have to be open and receptive to the evolving landscape, and knowing that there is now a different way of storytelling that you have to adjust to a different audience. So now, instead of having, a client do just an interview for, Forbes or Rolling Stone or Billboard, now it's like, hey, you may want to do this hit with 12-year-old Jazzy, who's getting these looks on. And she's the best. She's the best,
so cute. And
Shout
she's prepared, honey.
Too. Absolutely.
She comes prepared.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Shout out to her and her father doing phenomenal work. But just even some of the
also
other
Latina, which I love.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You should have them on.
I
too,
know,
for sure.
Seriously. You got to make that connection, because I don't know.
Say less. But other personalities and influencers, there's the People Gallery now. The guy's like, oh, what's your fit? What you got on today? Little things like that even just it moves the needle on social. So we're just having an open mind to seeing, okay, or you seeing, and obviously one of our clients is Drewski, and you're seeing what he did recently with him and Kaya Sinat at on
and
Twitch.
Kevin Hart.
And
that
Kevin
was
Hart.
hilarious.
So they blew it up. But that's another way that people are consuming media. And it's being able to be sure that you can evolve with the times. And it's like, hey, what worked for me in PR, 6 years ago isn't what works now. You have to make those adjustments. It's like anything. It's like in sports. The way LeBron James was playing earlier in his career is not how he plays now, for the Lakers. It's like, and you had to adjust over the times when he was in Miami. So in just many ways, regardless of the craft is always going to evolve. Now we see it with AI as well. So it's being open and not having a closed mind and thinking it's your way and the highway. You have to be open to evolving with the times, getting new information, and making sure you make those adjustments as a professional to continue to elevate.
And are your clients like receptive to this shift that is happening? Like, would you say that they're...
I would say most are. I mean, sometimes you have to explain it. And that's why part of it is also building the trust with some of these clients, right? Sometimes, thankfully, there's clients that I've been working with for several years that they have, 5-6 years that they have the trust that, like, all right, you tell me, I'll do it. There's been others that, again, a couple years in. And for newer clients, I mean, the job is always to make recommendations, right? It's like, hey, I have this opportunity for you, this interview, this, whatever the case may be, and make the recommendation and make a case as to why you think it's valuable for the client. Ultimately, they're either going to decide to do it or they're not going to decide to do it. Right? But then it's also just making the case, and if they don't decide to do it, that's fine because I still did my job. And if I did, then obviously, then you see, the fruits of the labor and, but that's always part of it. As I see, my job is always to make recommendations, and it's ultimately up to what the client wants to do, and I respect it either which way.
Okay, amazing. You ready? You down to do an exercise with me right now?
Let's get it.
All right. So, Banking on Cultura, you know what we represent and what we do.
Of course.
And what we're trying to accomplish here. So, given your storytelling magic, like, what would be your approach for Banking on Cultura?
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, in terms of from a PR perspective, right? Well, I think part of it is obviously highlighting some of the strong interviews you've had, obviously, like with Soledad O'Brien. So it's like also being able to highlight that and your pedigree and your story, right? Because even with you and how you've pivoted as an entrepreneur and now how you're pivoting to start your podcast and have obviously built it, into a growing powerhouse. And I think part of it is telling the story for people to know who you are. Because at the end of the day, you're the one behind the podcast. So it starts with amplifying your PR and your publicity, and then integrating the podcast as part of your narrative. And then as that builds up in its own, then focusing onto the podcast and letting the podcast grow in itself. But you already have some of the foundational pieces to help tell your narrative with some of the guests you've had. So it's really, it goes hand in hand, whereas your profile grows, as will the podcast. So that's kind of one of those ways. It's, I tell it even some of the restaurants that I represent in New York City. It's like as your profile grows as an entrepreneur, as this owner of this hot restaurant, so will just the attention to the restaurant.
So if I was a new client on the roster, what would be some questions you would ask me to help with the storytelling piece and like building the narrative?
I would ask what's unique about you? What makes you and your story stand apart from others? I think we'll start there, because I'm also very selective with my clients. Like, I need to make sure there's a story there. I'm not going to just take people for the check. I tell people this all the time. I care more about relationships. So sometimes it's all about timing for what your story is. And with some people, I'm like, your story's not there yet. You have XYZ come in this year. Let's talk later this year in a few months when you have that, because that'll be a better launching point to start doing press than now. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, I have this restaurant opening in December, but I want to get press now. It's like, well, if you don't have much of a backstory to you, it'd probably be better as we get a little closer. If you look at December, maybe we're talking about October, November to start building a press campaign for you, that is tied to the launch of the restaurant, and then that's going to make it more newsworthy. Otherwise, right now, if there's nothing else you got going on, it doesn't make sense for me to take you on right now. So it's really just like, hey, what do you have going on? What separates yourself? Right? What's the next era of the podcast? So, it's, you know what I mean? So I think that's part of it.
Okay, amazing. One of the things that I think about is when you talk about, like, what's the story? I find that, like, if you have, like, a traumatic story, like, people, like, feed into that, right? Like, if you, like, broke your ankle and then you ran into somebody who felt bad for you and wrote you a check and it just blew up, or, like, you grew up in a homeless shelter your entire life and you were able to overcome XYZ. What is the story, or what is the angle if someone doesn't have, like, that type of, like, I would say emotionally pulling type story, but they're doing dope shit?
Well, the dope shit is what the story is. It's just what is the dope shit, right? That's a part of it, because it's not everyone has to have. Some people just have bland, regular stories, and that's fine. But what is the dope shit, and what separates your dope shit from somebody else's, from the landscape, right?
Okay.
It has to be unique.
Okay.
And I'll take the example of one of our clients, Say Less Restaurant, right? One of the hottest restaurants in New York City, and I think what set them apart was that, just from when they launched, like, just the amount of athletes and musicians, like, it was just like the celebrity. You rarely see a restaurant launch where it's just an influx of celebrities just off the get-go coming in, right? So it's like, okay, how did this just become, who just opens a place and it just becomes the hottest place, period, right? So that helps you tell that particular story, like, hey, you know, this was, and it came right out of COVID. So it was like, that's the other part of the angle. It was like, okay, COVID, where, you know, the hospitality industry really suffered. And then all of a sudden, coming right out of it, you know, January 2022, while you're still kind of in the thick of it, kind of not, how do you all of a sudden come and just like take over the hospitality space coming right out? So I think there's different layers to it for sure that help tell that story. But even if you take just a celebrity component out of it, it's just like, what is moving the needle for others, for culture, you know, that's also what's going to really help tell the story, because we're always in a crowded marketplace. So that's why I'm asking, what separates your story? What is the story you want to tell that hasn't been told already? I ask people that a lot as well.
I love that. So, okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty of that. So, grew up with a single father, big time daddy's girl. He would wake me up 4 o'clock every day for us to head to Wall Street, where he managed a restaurant. So I would see his resilience. I would see his work ethic. I would sleep in the booths. And then fast forward, first one in my family to go to college, first one in my family to start a business. I started my career on Wall Street. I was the only Latina on my team, and I used to walk down the hallways with my loud curly hair, had like a tattoo on my ankle. And I'll share a funny story with you, because this story is so funny. So there was a time where I was looking at a client's account. His name was Joel Epstein. But I never met a Joel before. I know Joel. And it's spelled the same way.
Right.
And so when I brought the account,
I would have thought it, Joel.
So I brought the account to the broker, and I was like, oh, you know, Joel Epstein has, you know, $5 million to invest. I remember he started laughing, and it's like an open floor. He started cackling, and everybody's like looking at me, and everybody's like laughing at me. And he says, Victoria Jen, are you stupid? Do you not know how to read? That's what he said to me. So imagine the only Latina on this floor. I already stick out like a sore thumb. Now this white dude is telling me that I'm stupid and I don't know how to read. So in that moment, I said, that's an interesting perspective. I walked back to my desk. I put the speakers on loud, and I asked Google to pronounce and spell Joel in Spanish. So now the whole trading desk was able to hear this go on, and soon all the laughter and chatter chimed down. And I walked up to him, and I was like, you see, clearly there's a learning opportunity here. You never met a Joel, and I never met a Joel. And it was a pivotal moment because it shifted his perspective. And now he's like my broker. He like manages all my accounts, and we're like the best of friends.
I'm glad you guys are tight now.
Yeah, now we're tight.
I thought it was I was gonna feel some type of way. And then
now we're tight. But it happened again when we went out to like a restaurant. It was like this fancy steakhouse. And I'm ordering from the menu, and I ordered arugula. Now I'm thinking arugula is cheese because I never had arugula before. You know, I had like ensalada con tomate. You know? And so when it came to the table, I was like, sent it back to the waiter, and I was like, oh, this is not cheese. Again, everybody kiki laughing. But it was those moments where like your cultura, like you have an opportunity to either like bow your head down and think like, you know, the self-doubt and think like, wow, this is embarrassing. I don't belong here. Or you use it as a learning opportunity. But anyway, I'm pivoting. But that was two funny stories that happened in my career. And so, you know, was in the Wall Street game for quite a while, built my client accounts. And after 15 years being in corporate, I decided to bow out and start my own business 7 years ago. And now I get to teach women to do exactly what I did, who want to transition out of corporate, don't know where to start, and they don't want to lose their financial security. So I teach them how to go about doing that. And then last year, I feel like this is my interview. We're interviewing me.
You know, I used to be a journalist. What can I say? Never left me.
Here we go. What's up, mi gente? Are you looking for mentorship and the place to secure the big bag? Have you ever watched me here on the Banking on Cultura podcast and thought to yourself, you know what? I want to work with Victoria Jen. Or maybe you thought to yourself, I want to be a part of her network of badass women and entrepreneurs. Well, guess what? You absolutely can. Join me this November 15th through the 16th in the heart of New York City for my 7th annual Secure the Big Bag and Wellness Summit. Let's face it, so many of us are tired, burnt out, ready to throw in the towel, honey, and quite frankly, we want to dedicate ourselves to the soft life. But what if there was a way for us to achieve both time and financial freedom and also have a healthy, well-balanced life? What if you could secure the big bag, build a business that fuels you versus drains you, as well as build a solid network of business besties who want to support and motivate you while also centering self? This summit is the premier destination for the latest marketing, sales, and AI tools that can 10x your business while also nurturing your well-being. Learn from top experts from both business and wellness, including executives from the corporate sector, so that you can explore corporate level opportunities that can elevate your business to new heights. Ensuring you're not just prepared, but fully equipped to dominate in 2025 and beyond. This is your opportunity for your business to thrive while you do too. Head over to securethebigbag.com to check out the agenda and all the heavy hitters that will be in the building. I cannot wait to see you in New York City, mi gente. It's go time. Last year I turned 40. And I felt like, this was how old are you? Do you mind sharing?
Huh? I'm 35.
35. Okay. So you'll experience this when you get towards 40, or maybe you already have. But it was like, okay, what am I going to do with this next decade of my life? Right. How am I going to make my stamp? Yeah. And so I went on this spiritual retreat to Costa Rica. And it was there when God was like, you know what, V, it's time for you to double down on your community. It's time for you to give them the tools, the resources that they need in order to break generational curses so they can build generational wealth. And that's how the podcast was born. Right. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? What's going to be the medium? And I was like, all right, we're going to call it Banking on Cultura, which means how are you using your cultura as a competitive advantage versus an Achilles heel? And then how are you getting educated to basically increase your income streams? Launched last year, over 11 million impressions. Soledad is a partner on the project. We've had over 50,000 views on YouTube.
Flex on them.
You know, we've got press. We've got some good, inclusion across the press lines. And the buzz is there. So now it's about how are we taking this to the next level? And how I look at it, if you think about Earn Your Leisure and what they're doing for the Black community, there's nothing like that exists in the Latino community.
And that ultimately goes back to what the original question you was, which is what makes your story stand out, and that's what it is right there, is how you're starting to empower people with the tools and the knowledge and the resources, especially in the Latino community, where we need it, because we're not taught that, especially I'm first generation born here. And again, thankfully, my father, when he immigrated here, my father, came here in his early 20s, started off as a waiter, was able to, ultimately, get his master's and work at Bloomberg, was able to make 6 figures. And for me, I'm like, I have no excuse. I was born here. Right, my father came here and only moved with $200 when he came here, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I was like, I have no excuse. So I think with that, we're not taught a lot of that, and thankfully my father did, but I also know a lot of our families aren't. And it's being able to, again, individuals like yourself who are using your platform to blaze a trail and to really work and equip our communities with that knowledge, because it starts with knowledge. A lot of people just don't know what to do, and they need to find the right resource in order to do so. Even for me, I never even envisioned a life for myself as an entrepreneur. Never. Honestly, the very first inkling that just the thought happened and came into my mind, I still remember, was in 2019, where it was my old company is just one of the it's building administrations. I oversaw just general operations for just kind of the building, the office or whatever. And he was just like, he's like, you ever thought about starting your own company? I'm like, no, why? I'm just like, all the responsibility would fall on me. He's like, well, how different is that from everything right now? It's like, the CEO got you doing the last line of defense for everything pretty much. And I thought about it, I'm like, it's a good point. And then it was somebody else that, I won't say who, but it was somebody I was doing some interviews with. I had just met for the first time, and that individual liked how I moved. And then that person, after we did a day's worth of press, she's like, you see that office right over there? I could see you owning and running one of these offices one day. From the first time I met this person, I'm just like,
that's amazing.
So then that was the first, I had, at that point then, like maybe like 3 people told me that year. And that was the first time that I really started to think about it. I was just like, oh, okay. If it took other people seeing it, overseeing it for myself, because I had never thought of that in just what we were raised. Like even in some of my first few jobs, like I didn't even know how to negotiate right. They gave me the first offer for a job, I'd be like, cool, I'll take it. I was never taught to just how to the proper technique to negotiate until a little later in life, where then at that point then I made up the bread that I lost in the beginning. I was like asking OD, but so it goes to that point that there's voices like yourself that is absolutely needed for sure, and that's part of your story and what makes you unique and the approach that you should take from a press perspective, because like you said, Earn Your Leisure is doing that in a major way for the Black community, but who's doing it for the Latino community right now, and who's doing, and I'm sure there are, so for those that are, but don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to get anyone in my DMs being like, well, I am. You haven't seen me yet. But that's just something that also with your background and what you experience as being, one of the few Latinas in Wall Street, I think is something that also adds just an interesting component to your narrative.
This is good. And I hope you guys are paying attention, right? So these are the type of questions you should be expecting to be asked of you whenever you're pitching yourself, whether that's to a PR rep or to somebody you want to get buy-in on your project, you're raising money, whatever it is. Like, critically think about the answers to those questions and practice saying them out loud. Like, this is literally a live practice session thank you so much for participating in that exercise, by the way. But I want you guys to really take advantage of what he is dropping right now, because it will set you up for the future. With that being said, how should entrepreneurs be thinking about who reps them? Like, what are questions they should be asking potential, like, people that they are considering to represent them? Like, how should they be, like, assessing, like, who they want to hire?
In terms of PR agencies and publicists? Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think part of it is getting their vision for what they see for their company. So if I'm a business owner and I'm coming, I'm a business owner not in PR looking for a publicist, I would want to get a sense of where they think we are in the landscape, what we're missing, what is room for improvement, what are we doing well, what are we not doing so well, and starting off there, right? What are some publications? Now, the one thing you have to be careful for, and that's part of, unfortunately, the nature of just not only our business, but a lot of businesses, that people oversell and underdeliver. So I think the biggest piece of advice I would give anybody looking to hire PR publicists is start off with a 3-month agreement. Like, some people start off with like 6-month contracts or year contracts, and again, like, other people are gonna be like, yo, why are you giving out this free game and all this stuff?
That's what we here for.
But it's all about being transparent, because if you're a good PR person, if you're a good publicist, you ain't gotta worry about it. The business is gonna extend after the 3 months, and that's that. But that's your best way to truly evaluate if they are for real or are they overselling and under-delivering. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of people, it's just like how you interview employees for your company. There's people who know how to interview well, but when it comes time to do that work, they don't do that work. So I think part of it, that's one thing, is, again, kind of getting a sense of what's your plan, and then flipping the story, what are some stories that you think can be told about my organization? What do you feel makes my organization, stand out? And then getting a sense, you got to also make sure you're interviewing the PR person, because there's sometimes that people come and just want to be like, yo, take me. And I'm always like, why should I take you? But I think sometimes some other organizations, clients, whoever, need to be like, why should I, what do you feel is, how are you going to tell the best story for me compared to other PR companies as well? I think that's also, you got to flip it on its coin, because at the end of the day, we're interviewing each other. We gotta meet the vibe check, but we also gotta meet the strategy. Be on the same strategical wavelength.
And like, what is your requirement when you're thinking about taking on a new client? Because your roster is, high pedigree, if you will, people that are, I don't know if this is true, I'm assuming, but they already have a vibe. They already have like some type of buzz, and then you're like escalating it to the next level. Would you say like that's kind of where you play and that's where you like to recruit from?
In some senses, I mean, listen, we've worked with people, like in many ways where they were not as well known. Where like I don't say not as well known. Like in many ways, a lot of people we take in are already obviously strong names, but it's just elevating their narrative and telling it in different ways. So that's kind of what it is. And there's several other musicians, entertainers, even athletes who have approached us, but my thing is also, what is the story? Like, if I feel like you've already kind of maxed out, and because when it comes to just say musicians, obviously, my thing is there's some musicians who are just musicians. They're not entrepreneurs. They're not investing in different things. They don't have other interests outside of music. They're not acting. They're not doing philanthropic work. They don't own different businesses. They're not producing different things. So one thing that I really love is when just some of these musicians have all these other different side hustles, because it really helps us paint a picture. I just feel like a lot of people look at it like, oh, you're a rapper.
Like linear,
but it's like, no, it's like you are such a multifaceted individual. You are not just a rapper. You are not just a singer. You are an entrepreneur. You are a philanthropist. You know what I mean? And making sure you're sharing that side of the story. And I think some of the biggest things I love telling about my clients is when I throw them on Forbes, when I throw them in the places you don't expect, on Bloomberg, different places where you wouldn't anticipate, or when they're partnering with different organizations, you're like, what's that person doing over there? You know what I mean? And putting them in the unexpected places. So I think that's one of the things, and that's one of the reasons why we called, the organization Vital Versatility, is telling the versatile, comprehensive story of these organizations and these brands.
I love that. Look at you.
I'm just saying.
And how dope it is that you've been able to build a firm where you get to be selective and very intentional about who you bring on. I think all of us who have our own companies are aspiring for that level, right? Where you are so good that people are like constantly knocking on your door, like, take me, or like, work with me, and you get to say yes or no. I mean, that's why we risk it all, right? Is to have
and
that
I don't
freedom.
take it for granted, because I'm always a big believer in, you can lose it at any time. That's just life. You can lose it at any time. So, I've been unemployed. Like, one of the big turning points for me in my life was when I went from journalism to PR. And there was a period of 7 months when I was unemployed, where I went from like living in this like nice, 1-bedroom apartment in Boston to like living in my friend's attic. And it was one of those things where just like things were not hitting my way. I'm like applying for jobs and nothing. I'm like, I've always been very smart, you know what I mean? Like always on my grind. So I'm like, the fact that I was striking out on a lot of these, job interviews and applications, it was such a tough moment. And I think that's one of those reasons why I grind so hard now, because I still remember that moment clear as day. And I'm trying never to get back into that moment ever again. But God forbid that if I'm ever put in that position again, like that's what I think, what not only keeps me humble, but just keeps me kind of motivated, is just making sure that it's like the unexpected can happen at any time and you can be right back. And granted, I was back in that position willingly, like I willingly left and changed careers, but at the same time, it's just one of those things where just like not being complacent. Like, I'm very thankful that we have a great roster. I'm very thankful that we're in a position where we can be selective. But at the same time, being mindful of the fact that things can change, and you have part of being entrepreneurs, being able to weather the storm. And also the other thing they don't teach you, going back to the very first question, is like the immense responsibility that you have when you have employees, because you are responsible for their well-being, for their salaries and their ability to feed their own families, to be able to take care of themselves. So that comes with another extra layer of pressure, and I take that responsibility very serious, that I think people don't realize that, I'm grinding hard, not just for me, but I'm for you guys as well. So, and I want you guys to want it just as much.
How big is your team?
Right now we have four full-time employees and 1 intern.
Wow, that's awesome.
Man.
And you guys are spitting out. Goes to show you don't need like a 30-man team to do good work.
Yeah, no, and we're just continuing the trajectory, trying to build, and just making sure that it's people with the same hustle and focus and goals of just helping to build and not only invest in the organization, but invest in their own personal success. And
what's your vision? Like, where do you see this going next? Where do you want it to go next?
It's so funny. I get asked that question all the time, because I really didn't come into this with a vision. Like, I would have been cool if I just had 5-6 clients and it was just me and, everything. And then, I tell people all the time, I don't know whether I want to max out at 5 employees or 50 or 500. I'm just going to kind of continue to take the journey where it takes me, because I just want to make sure at the end of the day that I'm still happy and that I'm passionate. One of the best piece of advice my father gave me, and I'm so thankful to this day, was, I still remember, it was like 10th, 11th grade, we were in the car, and he was just like, and he was kind of going through it at work. And he was like, as you're picking college and you're picking your career, just make sure you do something you love. Do something you love, because then it won't feel like work, right? And I took that really, like, it resonated very deeply with me, because that's why I'm like, I want to be a sports journalist. And there's only a finite amount of positions in America to be a sports journalist, like super finite. It's not like being a lawyer or whatever. Like, you could pinpoint the positions in newspapers, the websites. So like, I was kind of really limiting myself, but I was able to go and achieve that dream. So ever since then, it was like, when I did the tech PR job, I wasn't passionate about it. I just needed to get my foot in the door. So I always knew, like, I'm going to do this for a few years, get the experience, and then I'm going to find a way to pivot. And I'm like, then I wasn't as passionate about sports as much, but I always was, just from the get-go, from my youth, was also very passionate about music and entertainment, and still about sports, just not as much when I was like journalist. But that's why I'm still able to kind of bridge sports, music, and entertainment. And now that's why in many ways I'm hustling, I'm always traveling, but it doesn't feel like work, because I would still be consuming some of this stuff even if I was just chilling doing some other job. And I think that's just the biggest thing for any aspiring entrepreneurs out there, is make sure you're passionate about what you're doing, because you're going to work harder at it and you're going to make more money in the long run. I had to look at the camera to say that, because that's the biggest piece of advice I have to give, because I had even sacrificed over the years. Like, when I left for companies, like, I could have made more money. Even at the company I was at before I went on my own, like, I had another offer that was going to pay me more than the job that at the other firm that was going to put me in kind of like the entertainment world. But I took the lesser offer because I wanted to get that experience, because I knew if I do well, I'm going to get my money up. And sure enough, within the first like 7-8 months in that position, the CEO of that company saw that I was doing such phenomenal work. He gave me like a big raise 7-8 months in that, far exceeded what I would have gotten in that other position. So it's also making sure that not everything is predicated on money. Obviously, money is important, and that's how we feed ourselves and take care of our well-being. But if you're passionate about something, that's your North Star, and that will guide you in the right direction. Sometimes you're going to have to make sacrifices to get there, but use that as the North Star.
Great advice. I want to get into the Talk That Talk segment and really talk about the state of mental health for the entertainment industry and how you manage that, because a lot of it is like on your table to make it look right and do right. But before we get there, do you have groupies?
What you mean, like groupies, like entertainment groupies? Or
like
what
groupies, because like you represent amazing clients and people in the industry know who you are. Like, you kind of are a superstar yourself. So, like, do you get that type of love in this space?
I mean, I always appreciate, the love I get from everybody across the board. But you know what I mean? I'll keep it at that. I appreciate all the love. But the true people know where my priorities lie. And that's the most important part.
Such a diplomatic answer. I tried, y'all. I tried to get you some
I'm a publicist.
I know.
I can get myself out of any box.
No breaking through. I love it. But that's like an incredible skill set to have that I think all of us can learn from, is how to, first of all, operate under pressure. And also how to answer questions in a way that you necessarily don't want to answer directly, but still give enough where people are appreciative of it. Of course.
Well, that goes, and I guess it's the segue to the mental health, but it's a lot of it is kind of, a lot of what we do is pressure, dealing with tight deadlines. And, when you're working with people of such a certain caliber and you're on their time, that comes with a lot of pressure. And even just whom I'm looking to hire and who I'm trying to bring to join part of my organization, I'm very clear with how demanding the schedule, how rigorous it is, and there's going to be sacrifices you're going to have to make to your personal life in order to do this. But in the same way I said, it's still going to be an investment where it's going to open up a lot of doors for you. I'm very thankful for what my past organization and my CEO, former CEO rather, my guy Ron, the doors that he opened for me to go and flourish. And now I'm trying to do the same to pave the way for some of my other team. But part of opening those doors, I have to let them know there's going to be sacrifices, there's going to be tough times. that are going to kind of break you, that you got to stay resilient and weather the storm.
So is dating hard for you in this space?
It is, you know what I mean? In the sense of it takes someone that can really, really understand just the work-life balance, and you know what I mean? So, but it's not even just that, it's just your family. It's your family, you know what I mean? Like, I was so thankful when I got to be at my little cousin's graduation a couple weeks ago, because I wasn't sure up until like the day of, when I knew nothing was on fire. And I'm just very glad that my family has been understanding. It's still very difficult for everybody, for all the loved ones in my life, but it allows me to create, one of the special moments was I got to bring my father to the White House a couple months back. And it's because I have, good connections, within the White House, and, and I brought my little cousins too, and different things like that. So I was like, hey, this is what I try to do to make the sacrifices worth it, is to create other opportunities for you guys. So even with my two cousins, it's like, they're 24 and 22. And it's what I'm trying to do is also set the example for like, hey, this is what is achievable for you guys. Like, now you've seen me blaze my trail, and I want this to incentivize you to what you guys can do to blaze trails for yourselves and see what's possible.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go into the mental health piece, because you're right. There are sacrifices that need to be made. But what I really would like to double down on is, how do you manage your mental health? Because you're taking on I don't want to call them issues, but the experiences of your clients when they're going through their own shit. And they have super high profile roles. They're always in the spotlight. And that catches on to you, especially if, there's a narrative going around that doesn't sit well with you. It doesn't sit well in your soul. Like, it has an impact on your psyche. So how do you manage your clients', I would say, psychological safety, while also prioritizing your own?
Right. Well, I mean, my clients know I'm always going to go to bat for them regardless, and especially the ones that have been with me long term. Like, they know, like, I'm going to advocate. But in many ways, it's also putting some boundaries in place, and it's tough. But like, one of the big boundaries that I try not to budge on, unless again it's emergency or I'm traveling, is essentially from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, I am sleeping. Like, I'm sleeping. I need.
From what time? 7 p.m. to
11 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Okay.
I'm sleeping.
Okay.
Right? Because there's a lot of people in this industry that they don't get enough quality sleep. Like, I learned at a young age the value of quality sleep. Like, I went to a Christian school growing up, and I had to memorize Bible verses for every Friday. And what I started realizing was the better quality of sleep I got, the stronger my memory would be over the course of it. So I really learned the value of sleep at a younger age. And I always had discipline. And that's the thing what's always carried me in life. And it's one of those things where making sure that I prioritize for myself to recharge and refresh, that's ultimately what sleep is for. But I can't take care of my clients if I can't take care of myself first. So that's kind of what, now again, sometimes I'm traveling. There's exceptions. Of course, you got events till 3 or 4 in the morning. And but whenever I can control it, for the most part, those are kind of the boundaries that I try to, put in place, making sure I set some time for myself, doing some things that, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's playing basketball with some friends, whatever the case may be, watching whatever I want to binge on Netflix just to like shut my brain off, because I'm always on strategy, go mode, that sometimes I just need to shut my brain off, watch Love is Blind, Too Hot to Handle, or whatever the fuck it is going to be. You know what I mean? Or watch Power, whatever the case is, and then just go sit back, enjoy, relax, unwind. So there's different byproducts to it, because there's some people that just all they do is kind of like run themselves to the ground, and they don't allow themselves that time. Like, these people that work till like 1, 2 in the morning, get 4. And listen, for some people that's how they may work, and I just know that doesn't work for me. I try to do the best I can. I'm more effective in the morning than late at night. I know there's a point at night where just like my brain shuts off. I'm incapable of forming good sentences, whatever the case may be. But that's why I'm like, I have to be able to put those boundaries in place so you can get the best quality work out of me. So I think that's the biggest part. But my heart does go out to so many people who are unable to, have those boundaries in place, or, get caught up in the life a little bit. Because that's ultimately, I know that what results in a lot of people, just having and struggling with their mental health in that particular case. So, but that again, for me, number one thing is prioritizing time for sleep. Like, it sounds very cliche, but it works wonders, and I feel like that's why I still kind of keep, I'm physically and mentally sharp.
Mm-hmm. Is there one thing that you do where, like, you're in the slums of it, like, mentally, physically, like, spiritually, you're just like, I need an escape? Is there something that you do outside of, putting on some reality TV?
I don't know. I mean, I go to the gym. You know what I mean? I just
Okay,
I go and work out,
Okay.
right? I think that's certainly one of those things. Maybe go play some Madden on PlayStation or something. That's another way to kind of just, just go out for some drinks with some friends. That's the other thing, is keeping your community in place. Because a lot of my friends, it's like, yeah, it sucks that I can't always, hang out with my friends because I'm traveling here or there. And it's just making sure that when I can, to make sure that I keep that community, because the community is your support system. And that's what kind of, continues to, infuse you and bring you back to life. So
I love it. I heard a couple of things. I heard boundaries. I heard tight community that gets it, that can support you in your time of need, working out, getting sleep. And for me, the way that I do it is I hop on a flight. By myself, which is why I went to Costa Rica by myself. I went to Bali in January by myself, because I was like, you know what? I'm bringing in the new year across the globe. I don't need nobody else to come with me. Like, I'm out, right? To kind of like reset, get your clarity, and just breathe a little bit, because you sometimes have to like exit your environment in order for you to like look from the outside in. When you're in, it's very difficult for you to kind of think outside the box. So you need to like escape.
I think for me, I'm on flights so many times. I'm like, I just want
to you just want to stay put. Yeah, that makes sense.
Give me like a long vacation that I can just unwind for a little bit. So,
makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, tell the people where they can learn more about you, the company, all the things. What do you have coming up?
Absolutely. Well, check out Vital Versatility, vitalversatility.com. Myself on Instagram, Didier Morais, DIDIER, MORAIS. Any prospective clients, come holla at me. Anybody looking for advice, holla at me as well. And just, and I appreciate the platform, and, appreciate the work you're doing, and however I can continue to help and make sure that we're educating our community and our people, I'm here.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, hermano. All right, y'all. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this video, I'm pretty sure you're going to love the next one. So make sure to click right here and tap into the next episode.